It's not a fracture of the MAGA movement. It's not a fracture of the Republican Party. When you cross the Republican Party, apparently there's no room for you, and she's realized that, and now she's sayonara.
What did she cross the Republican Party on mainly?
Look, I mean, she's attacked the president. She attacked the president.
On the Epstein files?
On the Epstein files, on the economy, and you know what?
I think she attacked the president because he was trying to stymie the release of the files that were going to expose.
Well, let's be clear. President Trump is the one who's actually delivering transparency that Biden could have done in 4 years and didn't do on the Epstein files. So to pretend like Donald Trump is like, oh my God, the Epstein files can never come out. He's done more than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
He's done more to embarrass himself. Remember that clip where he's like, are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
In today's video, Adam Mockler destroys Joe Borelli on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as the two explode into one of the most chaotic MAGA debates we've seen in weeks. This clash gets heated fast because while Joe Borelli keeps trying to stretch Trump's talking points, Adam Mockler shows up with hard facts about the MAGA civil war, Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation, and Trump's bizarre endorsement of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. And what really sends Joe scrambling is when Adam Mockler breaks down Trump's economic spin with actual data on inflation, unemployment, and why everyday Americans aren't feeling the recovery MAGA keeps bragging about. So let's dive in and watch how Adam Mockler shuts down Joe Borelli on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is realizing for the first time what it's like to be on the opposition side of Trump. She has clapped him on for years as he has over and over used the same vile rhetoric towards Democrats, towards other Republicans. But now she takes a principled stance for the first time and decides, I'm going to split with him on the Epstein files. And he goes scorched earth, calls her Marjorie Taylor Greene, unendorses her over and over.
Brown. He changed her.
It was so lazy, too. He says, because green grass turns brown. This guy's losing his juice. But the point is, Donald Trump has kicked so many people out of public life because they don't want to be the subject of his ire. This is what Mike Pence has gone through. This is what Liz Cheney has gone through. This is what Alyssa Slotkin is going through right now. He calls Marjorie a traitor, says he wants to execute or hang Democrats. And now Marjorie...
You've answered the question that you asked about whether MAGA is fracturing. The truth is MAGA is not fracturing. If Donald Trump couldn't simply unendorse someone and that'll eliminate her chances of being there, that's only because the majority of people, whether they're in her Georgia district or elsewhere in the country, are going to follow President Trump.
Well, it hasn't eliminated her chance. She did get an endorsement the first time.
This is an entrenchment of MAGA,
she wasn't endorsed the first time by Trump,
a fracturing.
People like Nick Fuentes or this America First movement are now going to be hardcore lobbying to get Marjorie Taylor Greene on their side, which will only accelerate this MAGA divide between a more, I don't know, anti-Israel, a more really populist movement versus now what's kind of becoming like the MAGA establishment, which is weird. So Nick Fuentes, he's a legitimate political operator. I know that he's like a hugely divisive dude online, but he is trying to make moves to gain leverage over the Republican Party. There is a very real chance that he capitalizes on this in such a way that Marjorie is then in his camp. I don't think that would be good for the current MAGA establishment.
I think the fact that she is actually resigning and talking bad about, in the sense of like, I'm out of here. It is a fracture. This is a huge fracture. You can't say that this person who was so loyal to him isn't a fracture.
But to go back to my point, it's not a fracture of the MAGA movement. It's not a fracture of the Republican Party. When you cross the Republican Party, apparently there's no room for you, and she's realized that, and now she's sayonara.
What did she cross the Republican Party on mainly?
Look, I mean, she's attacked the president. She attacked the president.
On the Epstein files?
On the Epstein files, on the economy, and you know what?
I think she attacked the president because he was trying to stymie the release of the files that were going to expose.
Well, let's be clear. President Trump is the one who's actually delivering transparency that Biden could have done in 4 years and didn't do on the Epstein files. So to pretend like Donald Trump is like, oh my God, the Epstein files can never come out. He's done more than Joe Biden did in 4 years.
He's done more to embarrass himself. Remember that clip where he's like, are we still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? Remember when he said that? This is a guy who just is running away from his past.
What makes this exchange so revealing is how Adam Mockler is pointing out patterns while Joe Borelli and Brianna Lyman keep insisting everything is totally normal in MAGA world. But the truth is nothing about this moment is normal, because what's happening to Marjorie Taylor Greene is exactly what has happened to every major Republican who's ever stepped out of line with Donald Trump. And there's real data to back that up. According to 538's tracking of GOP officials, over 70% of Republicans who publicly clashed with Trump between 2017 and 2022 either left office, lost primaries, or retired early. It's not coincidence. It's a documented trend of Trump purging dissent from the party. So when Adam Mockler frames this as part of a bigger pattern, he's not exaggerating. It's literally measurable. And the part Joe and Brianna keep glossing over is that the fracture isn't about Republicans versus Trump. It's inside MAGA itself. Nick Fuentes openly bragged on his live stream just last week that he plans to capture the party at the congressional level, and groups aligned with him have been making successful local inroads in states like Arizona, Idaho, and Texas. That's not speculation. Those candidates actually won primaries. So when Adam raises the alarm about an anti-establishment, more extreme faction gaining ground, he's talking about something already happening on the ground, not some left-wing fantasy. And Trump's bizarre about-face with Zohran Mamdani only reinforces Adam's point about Trumpism being less about ideology and more about loyalty. Trump spent months calling Mamdani a dangerous socialist and then suddenly praised him in person when the optics suited him. That's not strategy, that's volatility. And volatility creates factional cracks whether Joe and Brianna want to admit it or not. This debate isn't just noise. Adam Mockler is highlighting the reality insiders have been whispering for months. MAGA isn't stable, it's splintering in real time.
Tonight, a surreal love fest between Donald Trump and the next mayor of New York. Zohran Mamdani visiting the White House today in a meeting that had to be seen to be believed. In light of what each man has said about each other over the last few months, this was extraordinary.
He's a communist. We're going to go to a communistic state. That's so bad for New York.
I think I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again.
If there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power.
I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together.
I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare as a progressive Muslim immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in. What I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement.
The Mamdani thing is it's a disaster waiting to happen. We can't have a communist in charge of a great, supposedly free enterprise, kind of a representative city.
Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting.
Our city is under attack by an authoritarian Trump administration.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Trump walked back his threats to cut funding to New York, and tonight he even posted photos of the visit saying the meeting was a great honor. Errol, what's going on? I mean, Zohran Mamdani won because he was opposed to Trump.
Well,
how's this going to play?
The city of New York won because there was a non-zero chance that there would be National Guard troops and chaos in the streets, even before the inauguration of Mamdani. So it's great that that's not necessarily going to happen, or at least it's not going to happen imminently. I think, look, there are a couple of things that are going on. One is that Mamdani came the way you're supposed to come to Donald Trump. You come with strength, and you come with some kind of notoriety, with some popularity. So he didn't just win the election. He won in a way that nobody's ever seen before. He went from 1% in the polls to winning the Democratic primary in about 6 months. He's got a certain amount of celebrity. President Trump noted that there were more press there, international press included, than for some heads of state. That gets the attention of somebody like a Donald Trump. And I guess finally, look, it is part of the Trump story. The family fortune, the Trump family fortune, came from working with mayors and local officials in New York. And I think it's just kind of hardwired into him that being friendly with the mayor of New York can be a very lucrative proposition.
He said he used to want that job.
You saw Donald Trump essentially undermining the MAGA media ecosystem in real time. For the past few months, they've called Zohran Mamdani a jihadist, communist, a threat to America who's incompatible with the governing style of America. You think he's incompatible with the governing style of America?
His values are fundamental. Trump is wrong on this case.
You think Trump is wrong on this case?
Zohran Mamdani's principles are fundamentally hostile to the founding principles. His idea that we should confiscate property. John Locke, the founders, they were very clear that property rights
Has he ever talked to Errol? He's never said anything about confiscation.
He said he wants to take luxury
condos. Two debates that have interviewed him half a dozen times.
Then you would know that he said that.
There's no confiscation.
Hey, maybe there's a chance.
You would know that he said that. He said
means of property.
Can I just say,
luxury condos should be taken if they're not in use?
This is a perfect example. The MAGA media ecosystem has made Zohran seem like this extreme jihadist. And listen, some of his ideas
the
are outside
legislation
the
he supports in the council will force property owners, before they can sell it on the public market
It's called
to
right of
sell it.
first
Why didn't
refusal.
Trump confront him about that the other day? Why didn't Trump confront him about it? Why was Trump?
He said it was his honor.
Maybe he did.
He said it
You know
was
what
his
Trump
honor.
said? Trump said that we both agree on increasing
On the housing.
supply of housing, and
They're
that's
best
going
friends. They're BFFs.
I'll tell you why it hasn't.
What really stands out in this debate is how Errol Lewis and Adam Mockler are grounding their points in patterns we've actually seen play out in New York politics and in Trump's broader behavior, while Brianna Lyman and Joe Borelli keep falling back on talking points that don't line up with the facts on the ground. Take the Zohran Mamdani situation. The right keeps throwing around terms like communist and jihadist, but the political science research on local governance shows that mayors, no matter how progressive, can't just wake up and confiscate property. New York's city charter, state law, and the courts make unilateral property seizure literally impossible without legislative approval and rigorous due process. Even the vacancy tax ideas Brianna tries to paint as radical already exist in cities like Vancouver, Paris, and Melbourne, and they've been shown to increase housing availability without violating property rights. That's not extremism, that's policy experimentation in response to a real housing crisis. And Joe Borelli keeps acting like Trump's sudden friendliness toward Mamdani is just normal political outreach, but history says otherwise. Trump has a long, well-documented pattern of gravitating toward anyone with rising star power or media heat. He did it with Kanye West in 2018, with Tulsi Gabbard during her moment of Democratic controversy, and even with Gavin Newsom during the wildfires. Despite constantly attacking California, Trump is drawn toward political celebrities because it boosts his relevance, not because he suddenly agrees with them ideologically. Errol Lewis is absolutely right to frame this as Trump being magnetized by attention, not policy alignment. And on the MAGA media meltdown, Adam Mockler nailed something important. Trump directly undercut months of right-wing narrative building in one meeting. This isn't speculation. Far-right influencers like Laura Loomer and Sebastian Gorka have already posted furious responses accusing Trump of betraying the movement by normalizing Mamdani. The cracks are already there. So when Errol and Adam say this is bigger than one meeting, they're speaking to real political dynamics, not the inflated caricatures Brianna and Joe keep leaning on.
A new analysis also finds that overall dinner is 10% higher this year. But according to one MAGA ally, forget what you hear.
There are issues on some of these prices, although I think affordability is greatly overrated.
Just a quick reminder, that wasn't just a talking head on TV. Larry Kudlow was Trump's economic advisor during the first administration. And it's probably a bad sign that people MAGA aligned or even in the administration are basically saying, don't worry about it. You know, it's all in your head.
I was going to ask you the context of that because he just said overrated. So you're saying that they believe I didn't get the whole full of it. It was just like, okay, it's overrated. We don't need to talk about it now. I said this before on your show when we were talking about SNAP benefits when the government was shut down. I think that, and that's what Trump is experiencing and this administration is experiencing now. You can't convince people that they're not getting enough food. You can't convince people they don't have food for their children. You can't convince people that they don't have enough money to actually pay for gas. All of those things are real moments that you feel. So no matter whatever you're trying to sell me, and if you're trying to tell me that it's just overrated, American people will not believe that. We just won't do that.
It's a lot less abstract than some of the other Democratic talking points we've had. Like, so when we talk about January 6th or Trump upending the rule of law or not caring about norms, that's pretty abstract in people's day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
But the economy affects them every single day. And Trump is hardcore gaslighting about how the economy is doing. Like, he says that inflation is, he essentially said he killed inflation at one point. There was no inflation.
But inflation was higher under President Biden.
What was inflation?
Core inflation was 3.2 in December, and it's 3.0 now. CPI went up 28%. Be quiet, I'm talking, buddy. CPI went up 21%. That means that under Joe Biden, every American lost 20 cents on every dollar. We're at the Food Network. We're talking about beef. I know that's been a big issue, right? The meat industry, the Meat Institute, represents 95% of meat packers, poultry packers, right? They sent a letter to the Trump administration recently basically saying, here's how you can save the meat industry. Nothing about tariffs. It was all about stupid state and federal regulations.
The tariffs are an issue. They're not the whole story, but they are a big part of the story.
The U.S. cattle herd is lower than it's ever been.
But it's not just about
because
that.
of regulation.
There are many other elements.
It's not going to just double overnight.
When you walk through the grocery store, bread is higher, beef is higher, everything
eggs are
is
lower,
higher.
Coffee's higher.
Well,
you can pick and choose.
How much have eggs gone down over the past 12 months? How much have a dozen of eggs gone down?
Core inflation
it's 4
is
cents.
down.
4
is
cents
core
over the past
inflation
12
up
months.
or is core inflation down? Core inflation
is unemployment
down.
up or down?
Period.
Is unemployment
End of
up or
story.
down?
Core inflation is down.
No. Wait. Okay.
Core inflation is down.
Inflation.
Core inflation.
Is.
I'm saying core inflation.
Okay. But
cherry picking
inflation
core
is at what 3.2% now. That is a trend.
3% now. It used to be 3.1%.
But Joe, the trend since Trump came into office is that it has been ticking up, not ticking down.
Liberation Day tariffs only went into effect on August 7th due to Trump's 90-day delays, so we haven't seen the bulk of the effects, but I've seen the Republicans in the administration and on this panel cherry pick certain economic data that's incongruent with the way the average American feels. A dozen eggs is down 4 cents over the past year. That doesn't outweigh unemployment being up, unemployment for young Americans my age being up, unemployment for black Americans is spiking. That's an early indicator of a weakening job market. People are
Black
struggling.
American women,
and you can't,
especially.
Yeah, you can't just gaslight about this.
What Joe Borelli keeps missing in this whole exchange is that economic perception isn't some abstract political debate. It's backed by real measurable strain. When Abby Phillip and Adam Mockler push back on the idea that affordability is overrated, they're reflecting something economists have been warning about for months. Prices haven't gone back down, even if inflation has slowed. Inflation dropping from 9% to 3% doesn't magically reset prices to where they were in 2019. That's not how inflation works. It just means prices are rising more slowly, not that they're falling. And that's why people feel squeezed. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, household essentials like rent, auto insurance, and utilities have hit record highs. Rent alone is up more than 20% since 2020, a massive jump that dwarfs any tiny decline in eggs or milk Joe tries to cherry pick. Meanwhile, real wages, what people actually take home after inflation, only began recovering in the last year, and even now that recovery is uneven. Young workers and black Americans, exactly the groups Adam mentions, have seen joblessness increase faster than the national average over the last 2 quarters. That's not a vibe issue, that's data. And Joe's argument about tariffs ignoring their impact is just selective memory. Independent analyses from Moody's and the Tax Foundation found that Trump's tariffs functioned as a direct tax on American consumers, raising consumer prices by billions. Meat prices didn't jump because farmers suddenly overregulated. They jumped because tariffs increased input costs and disrupted supply chains. So when Abby and Adam push back on this MAGA spin, they aren't campaigning. They're grounding the conversation in what the economic indicators actually show. People know when their wallet feels lighter, and no amount of inflation is overrated rhetoric is going to convince them otherwise. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.